we're back. Thanks for tuning in, holding on to the last kind of stream we have with a guest, and we have the amazing Paula Scher with us. You no longer need introduced, but we'll still do a quick little round on what you do at Pentagram and what brought you to OFFF today.
Well, this is my 5th OFFF conference, and I'm so happy to see the conference come back after COVID. Assuming this is after COVID, but to see all these people here is fantastic, and I'm glad designers are enthusiastic to turning up and doing this, so it's great.
Yeah. How have the last kind of 2 years been for you? Where were you kind of staying, and how has your work been?
I have a weekend house in Connecticut, and at
Nice.
the beginning of COVID, we stayed up there almost full time, and I had to start working remotely on Zoom, which I absolutely hate, and I found it actually not great for design in that it's difficult to invent with other people when you can't make eye contact.
Yeah.
And I don't care about what tool you have and how you draw. Understanding comes from seeing somebody and seeing how they're getting either the direction or the commentary or how I'm receiving it. That matters in people working together. So I found that incredibly frustrating, and I made my team rush out and get vaccines, and we came back to Pentagram in June. I think on June 14th was our first day back, and we've been working ever since, but we changed the work week to 3 days a week, and we found that the creative work is in person, and if you're writing a manual or fulfilling corrections, that's something you can do at home in your underwear.
Definitely. How has it been picking up in Pentagram again and being in real life? I think a lot of people were saying it's quite overwhelming to get this rush of connection again and creativity. It takes a bit of time to process, right?
Well, I think that you get used to it pretty fast.
Yeah.
I mean, finding the right balance of how to work was a good lesson. That's the only decent thing I can say about COVID. But mostly it was overcoming the idea that you couldn't make eye contact, or meeting with clients was horrible.
Yeah.
You could not tell if they understood what you were talking about or if they got it. You didn't have that kind of human contact that happens with an in-person presentation. Very frustrating.
Yeah. And how about you personally? I think you're known for reinventing things. How has it been with the pandemic that we're suddenly stuck in something that you can't control, right? And there's this feeling of being home. So what is your solution to handling this?
Well, my solution was sort of handed to me because right before COVID, a collector commissioned me to paint a Porsche, which it took me 1.5 years to paint.
Yeah.
And that was how I spent my more
perfect
creative time during COVID. And I learned that it's very difficult to lie under a car and paint the bottom side. That was my major learning takeaway, aside from the fact that it was exceedingly physically painful and difficult, but I loved the result.
Yeah. And has there been any, you're also known for your accidents and happy accidents. Have you found anything during these last 2 years that was particularly marking, or that you were able to continue, creating?
Well, I think that I still enjoy my work with the public theater because I get to reinvent it each year. Yeah. So the year before we did typography, where the legs got very skinny of the letter forms and they danced and kicked and did things. So it was nice to have the animated typography be part of the campaign. And this year we've created specific design fonts for all the different plays, where it uses the type we use, which is called Knockout, and you insert illustrations into the places where there might be a hole in the O. You would put maybe a lightning bolt or a heart, or we drew the filled-in alphabet and made about 5 or 6, and the in-house art department will continue doing it for each individual play, which was fun.
Tell us a bit more about your love for typography. I think that's always an interesting way that you keep on approaching it with fresh eyes.
I think typography is an incredible form of expression because words have meaning and typography has spirit, and you can contrast. You can say something loud and do it in the script, and that's sort of the opposite, or you can exaggerate a thought. There's a tremendous power in scale and typography of how you use words and what you make big and what you make little. The composition on the page is always exciting, and that I never get tired of it. And I think that we're in such a terrific age of typography. I mean, people are drawing beautiful fonts and working with them in really interesting ways, and I've never been in a better time for type in my life, actually.
Do you see a lot of French talent coming out as well, who's readdressing, just changing the industry again and looking at it from a fresh perspective you haven't seen probably?
I think that the young typographers are really moving the profession forward because they've come to the field armed with a type of training that makes them create things of quality that have a newness and a freshness, even though nothing in typography can really be new. It's a manner of how you push the form, and there's a lot of really terrific courses, and the kids are learning it very young, and virtually everybody can program type coming out of school now. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. You have quite a kind of humorous and satirical way of looking back at some of your career paths and the changes you've taken and the ways you've gone. What is a highlight that you can share, or anything that still stands out? My presentation at this conference is going to be about my three-dimensional design, about environmental graphics, which I really began starting in my 50s. So, that you can take these career paths that you don't expect in life, and you can combine what you know from the past into something you build that is a new reflection of that. Yep.
You never really change. You only grow and use what you know. But you're always yourself.
Yep.
That doesn't change. But it was interesting to me in relationship to the environmental graphics, without giving away most of the talk, was how unprepared and unqualified I was to do the first work I did. I really had no qualifications for the job. And I think that that's a tremendous advantage because you do unexpected things out of ignorance, and that's great.
Yeah, the fearlessness, it's coming out again. So you do have a talk at OFF, and I think we've mentioned already with a few guests that there's a lot about technology and kind of the change in the industry as well. How do you receive that, and what's kind of happening around you in terms of conversations?
Technology has always changed.
Yep.
When I was in art school, you blew up typography on something called a Lucy machine. And it was this big operation, and you sort of had big sort of wheels on the side that you turned to make something bigger or smaller, and you traced it. That's how you determined, that's how you looked at things. And then that was thrown away because then there was the photostat camera, and that was really exciting. And then there was the Xerox machine, and that was really groundbreaking. And we all talked about how Xerox machine is the end of typography, because people were pushing it around and scanning it and changing it and stretching it and doing terrible things with it. And it's always, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. The technology always changes.
Yeah.
It changes. For students I had in the late 80s who had started in the late 80s in a design school and graduated in the 1990s, it was really a tough time for them because they had to move from pre-computer to total computer. And that they spent so much time learning the software that I felt like they didn't really learn design principles well enough because they were obsessed with the equipment, where the students who came after that period could really soar with the equipment. But the equipment is the equipment, and they're tools. It's still the person that makes the stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what people have to remember. So if you see something that can do something and you think you know how to work with it, that's terrific, as long as you're bringing yourself into the process, not the machine.
How do you shape this very early on? I think anyone starting, especially as a student, needs to have this confidence in being, finding an identity and being, testing things and trying things. That must be quite challenging, especially when, it's so competitive, I think, as you're starting out.
Well, I think that starting out is a learning process, and that you want to be around people who are doing things you admire and be in a situation where you can learn from them, and then what you do is you you try to surpass them.
Yeah.
Which is the goal
Yeah.
of everyone. And
Yeah.
I think that you have to be a bit of a sponge.
Yeah.
I've known people who were what I call wunderkinds, the people who start out and hit some kind of a niche in their inventiveness, and a lot of them crash and burn later because the pattern of growth in design is not that fast. It's actually a long period of learning, and if you're lucky, it's a lifetime of learning, and that's what keeps the work fresh.
Yeah. We've talked a bit as well about female kind of designers and in the industry and the changes that we've seen, especially yourself starting out. I think it wasn't so straightforward. What changes have you seen, and do you feel like the industry is a little bit more open and we're seeing these younger designers also being?
Women have made enormous strides in design. Not enough for my taste.
Yeah.
I wish it was a little faster, but in fact, if I compare the amount of women in the industry who are doing visible work and command some sense of power in their work, you can't compare it to my early days in the profession where there were just so few you could count them on your hand. Now there's a reasonable community, and I think women still need to be vocal and speak up and defend their work and be public about their work and also be committed to learning and growing.
Yeah. And I think some of these events are bringing out as well connection between more and more designers all over the world, and it's great to be back in person as well to see this happen. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of days. I had a couple questions about your experience also with Netflix and having this whole abstract kind of series coming out. I think it's really interesting to see how I think especially during the pandemic, a lot of the audience was kind of drawn to finding inspiration in new ways. How was your experience doing this?
Netflix, the director was a man named Richard Press, who was really terrific.
Yeah.
And he made the film first by interviewing me, and he interviewed me for about 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
And then the film was comprised of the interviews. And then the action was really me walking up and down the steps of Pentagram, or walking out and across the street, or sitting in a taxi cab, or walking down the middle of Manhattan. And it drove me crazy because he made me take 1,000,000 takes. It was really hot out. Sometimes my shoes weren't comfortable. It was and going up and down the steps of Pentagram was just a horror. He made me do that like 15 times in a row because he didn't quite catch it right. And yet, when I saw it on film, it was amazing because he was illustrating my words with my actions, and like he said, at one point, he said to me, "Go in the bathroom and put on some lipstick." And I went and they came in with a camera and they started filming me putting on my lipstick, and I thought, "What's this for?" And then I realized it was from this thing I had said. 3 weeks before about I put on my lipstick and figure it out, which was just sort of a phrase, but he managed to take the interview and figure out how to illustrate it. And when I did the diagram of a meeting, I had to do that take over and over again because he wanted me to draw the diagram on glass where it wasn't pre-drawn, and he had me do it over and over again, and I had to bend over, and it was hurting my back, and I couldn't draw it right, and I really said, "Why can't I just draw it on a napkin?" He goes, "No, you have to do it through the glass."
All right, so there was quite a process to this. But it's interesting how, and I'm discovering this as you say it, but the kind of piecing together a post kind of interview to make sure this comes storyline, and we really discover you, I think, in this kind of episode.
He's a really good director, and I was really pleased with the result. I usually hate watching myself on film. I was really nervous at, he said, I think I got it from the company, Scott Dadich, who was the producer of the films. He sent it to me really early in the morning, and I remember I watched it by myself because I was afraid to look at it, and I liked it.
Yeah.
It's
a great feeling to like yourself
which was really weird. I rarely like myself or
Yeah.
feel comfortable about
Yeah.
it. But he caught some interesting things, like the thing where I was talking about my father. He really caught something on film that I hadn't seen in myself because nobody's photographing me talking about that. So that was sort of fascinating.
To me, there was a real personal element to that, to seeing you in your home and also with your partner and in creating those maps at scale. I think that was the highlight for me, not necessarily Pentagram, but a little bit more about the story that's personal and feels like, going back to the roots a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that something you still do in terms of the maps, and did you carry on?
Well, that's what the Porsche was.
Yeah.
It's a map of. Yeah. If you open that map, I guess up because and what was interesting is that I had to figure out it was a map of the United States, and it ran on the sides of the car, which were longer, so you could fit the whole map. So it started actually in California on the front end because the West Coast needed a bigger area than the back, which was the East Coast. So that, and then I had to go over the top of the car, and then I realized that I had to paint half or a third of the map upside down because it goes over the back of the car. I mean, it was really a challenge.
Yeah.
It was a feat. So I experienced the United States in a way I do not want to repeat.
Fair enough. What are you going to find in terms of other obsessions? You have these obsessions and this focus and line of detail. What else can fulfill that? I think the maps feel so personal to you.
Well, I want to grow them and move into maybe a little bit more about astronomy, a little bit more about ecology, a little bit more about the planet in general. Yeah. I think that the maps have become more political. Yeah. I just finished a series, which I want to do. Actually, still want to do 2 more paintings on hurricanes. And just sort of where they blow and what they disrupt and how prevalent they are.
Yeah. Final words, kind of going back as well to Pentagram. Any exciting feedback on and sneaks on what is happening the next years or what you're focusing on. I know obviously it's a big part of what you do as well. So,
I think my goal is to try to make the work as diverse and as broad-based as I can. I want to work. I'm especially enjoying working on things I've never worked on before or with clients that are not like other clients. And that's always been my focus, is to actually be able to change by doing different things. And so, but still retain myself within it, and that's my goal.
Yeah. I think you've talked as well about the kind of large projects and things you can't achieve with these large projects and what the personal kind of smaller scale brings to you. What is the different feeling and how do you encourage others to do that as well?
Well, a designer has to eat. And
Fair.
I think it's important for designers to have projects that have scale and pay serious money and be able to run successful businesses. Yeah. And at the same time, they need to work out. Yeah. You can't eat without working out. Yeah. So I think that you find those projects that are small that you do because you can grow or because you like a cause or because you want to be involved that way, and you balance them.
Yeah, definitely. So we're back at OFF now, and you have kind of 2-3 days to continue exploring, and I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to seeing you. Any highlights? You have a talk. Any other kind of highlights from the conference, and how is it to be back?
Well, it's just, as I said, it's just wonderful to see all the people here and see that this is still alive, and it's great. And I just think Hector always did the best job with this. It's amazing. It's amazingly run conference, and it seems very casual and natural, which is part of the nice thing about it. As far as being here, I want to see people who are going to interest me, and I want to enjoy Barcelona.
For sure.
And maybe buy a good pair of shoes.
Love that. That's great. How long are you actually staying in Barcelona?
I'll be in Barcelona leaving on Sunday.
Okay, so you're doing the quick trip.
Yeah, yes, I have a partners meeting actually in Scotland, and I have to go back to New York in between. Okay. So it's actually a lot of flying right now after, 2 years of not flying.
We just talked about your jet lag right before this as well, so I hope that won't carry you through this next.
Well, jet lag is a fact of life. There's nothing you can do about it. That has not improved nor gotten worse. It is the same condition all the time.
So you really stopped traveling the last 2 years, right? There wasn't any else.
Well, I did one European trip to Paris and another to England last November. Last November, but I think that was the first trip since COVID began. Yeah. So it's been minimal.
Yeah, and I think everyone really feels this intensity of going back, as we said, and being part of these events and having these conversations. So great having you. Any other events this year that you'll be attending where we can see you, or not yet?
There are a lot. I just don't remember what
Yeah,
they
no
are.
worries.
There are. You
I
have
think
to,
start with
you have to
often.
ask Olivia, my coordinator, because she keeps
Yeah,
my
of course.
calendar and she can actually tell you where it. I never
She
know
is
where
actually
things-
great. I have to feedback that. Yeah, I've spoken to
No,
her
she
many
is.
times.
She's wonderful, and
She
she
is.
sort of, points me in the direction, and I go.
Yeah, great. And you attend. Brilliant. I will let you off and explore a little bit more of everything at OFF. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
It's
you.
been great having a
My
quick
pleasure,
chat as well.
really.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Take
Everyone
care.
will stay tuned. We will have portfolio reviews coming up. Melanie is going to take the hosting seat. So she'll be with us and giving a little bit of feedback on some work that you submitted. So stay tuned and see you right in a couple minutes.
Excellent.